West Indies Cricket, Caribbean Cricket Podcast. West Indies Cricket, Caribbean Cricket Podcast.
Yes, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another edition of the Caribbean Cricket Podcast. I'm one half of the Caribbean Cricket Podcast, Machel St. Patrick Hewitt, and with me as ever is my partner in crime, Santokie and Machel. Santokie, how you doing?
Yeah, all good, Mash. You know, we're fresh off recording our last video on the CPL floodgate issue, and that's been one of our most viewed videos of all time. You know, Caribbean Cricket Podcast, we get the region talking. If anyone hasn't, check out the video. Look at the comments. It's nearing 300, I think, people cussing out CPL, others cussing out Guyana. It's a madness there. But like we say, Mash, we're by the fans, for the fans. We discuss all the talking points. And so it's without further ado, we have today's episode, which follows the announcement by Cricket West Indies of the white ball squads, which are to tour Sri Lanka. That tour starts next Sunday the 13th of October. Those of you looking at the thumbnail might look at it and think, hold on, why have these men called it a white ball revamp? These are the same man. We're seeing the same down bad players getting picked again. But technically, Mash is a revamp. This is the first squad picked under the new selection policy and procedure announced by Cricket West Indies. So whereas before you'd have a lead selector, the head coach, and a fellow selector. So before it was Desmond Haynes, Roland Butcher, and the head coach, Darren Sammy, for instance. Now, you've almost got like a pyramid system where each franchise or territory has talent identification staff. They report certain data on players to a senior talent manager, and that senior talent manager then presents it to the head coach, which in this case would be Darren Sammy, and Darren Sammy has essentially the authority or final decision on who gets selected. So it hands more onus onto the head coach in terms of picking the squad. So when we're looking at these squads, Darren Sammy essentially had final say on it, but it also means there's more sort of data-driven analysis rather than, you know, the eye test, which you've previously seen. So it'd be interesting to see long-term how this sort of new structure kind of affects selections and what kind of player that unearths. But yeah, as I said, Mash, then technically it is a white ball revamp.
Yeah, although I would love to know, because no one ever officially said, we can only go off the press releases. So based on everything that you've just said, we have to assume that some kind of new-ish policy has been used to select these sides. But we'll never actually know, Santokie, how much of it was Sammy as head coach saying, well, I just want this guy or I want that guy. And that will never come out in the wash. But it's worth, before we even start talking about the squads, just looking at some aspects of the press release, because West Indies press releases are always fascinating things to dissect, because it's often what isn't said that poses more questions than what actually is said. So let's just read through this one. Head coach, sorry, hold on, where are we? Right, the T20 squad. So we'll start with the T20s, Darren.
Yeah.
Santokie. The T20 squad will take on Sri Lanka from the 10th to the 17th of October, 2024. After a resounding 3-0 series sweep against South Africa earlier this year, the West Indies have climbed the rankings, moving to 4th place and established themselves as serious contenders on the world stage. That's good PR there. Very good PR placing. Several senior players, including Nicholas Puran, Andre Russell, Akil Hussain, and Shimron Hetmeyer, have opted out of the tour for personal reasons, opening the door for newer faces and returning players. Captain Rovman Powell will lead the side, with Roston Chase continuing in his role as a vice-captain. Then Sammy says some stuff. Sammy says, the Tour of Sri Lanka gives us a chance to test our... Sorry, my screen's now not showing me what it says. Something about to test our depth and assess players in different situations, especially with several senior players missing out for various reasons, including the need for rest and rehabilitation from injury. We are confident in the squad's ability to compete strongly against Sri Lanka. And the named squad is as follows: Rovman Powell, Roston Chase, Fabian Allen, Alec Athanase, Andre Fletcher, Terence Hines, Shea Hope, Alzari Joseph, Shamar Joseph, Brandon King, Evan Lewis, Gudakesh Moti, Shafane Rutherford, Romario Shepherd, and Shamar Springer. Santokie, I want to start with from the top. They said that Akil, Shimron, Nicholas, and Andre Russell have opted out of the tour for personal reasons. We don't need to know what those personal reasons are. I'm fine with them just saying it's personal reasons. But interestingly, they said several senior players, including those four. Because there's some other players not mentioned, Santokie, who I'd love to know why they're not included. I'm not saying they should be, but I'm just saying they're not. Johnson Charles isn't included. Jason Holder isn't included. Let's just add those two as an example. Now, Obed McCoy's not included, so that's already an extra 3. I'm not here to say they should be there, but I am here to say when you put a press release out and say these 4 players, Hetmyer, Puran, Dre, and Akil, have opted out for personal reasons, if you don't put every player who's out for some kind of reason, it leaves the door open for people like us to go, so what's the reason for this person then? Are they dropped or do they have a personal reason? Do you get where I'm coming from, Santokie?
Yeah, we always say this. Like, it's good on the one hand that when Cricket West Indies address sort of reasons why players aren't in the squad. But then on the other hand, as you said, say Johnson Charles, who's been in the squad up until now, there's no reason why he's gone. So are we assuming he's part of the several senior players who have pulled out for personal reasons? Has he been dropped? There's no clarification. So as always with these press releases, as you said, Mash, at the top, they're fascinating to read. Often they lead to more questions than answers. And as you said, going back to, poor Andre Russ Hetmyer saying with personal reasons, obviously we don't know the reasons why they're pulling out. So we can't really comment on that. Obviously we'll get a lot of headlines about top West Indian players not featuring on this tour. But realistically as well, Mash, with the T20 World Cup, a year and a half away, early 2026, the ODI, we're not playing in the what's it called, Champions Trophy. So our next ODI tournament is 2027. Realistically, Mash, you'd imagine crammed in between all the franchise tournaments going on at the moment, this was probably the time when a lot of players just thought, you know what, it's long going to Sri Lanka to play these realistically. Obviously, we don't know, there could be other personal circumstances, but looking at it as a fan, it's not too surprising that we've seen some players pull out from this tour just because of the lack of importance and context around it. But yeah, as you said, Mash, rightly as well, because based on the fact that Sammy's in the unusual position of being a head coach of a CPL franchise as well, St. Lucia playing tonight in the final against Guyana Amazon Warriors, he's seen firsthand sort of the performances in CPL. Johnson Charles is the 3rd top run scorer, average 44 at a strike rate of 156. So if you're looking at that T20 squad, if you're calling back an Andre Fletcher, who didn't perform as well, is older than Johnson Charles as well, it leads to the fact, has Johnson Charles been, why is he not in the squad? Surely it must be he's opted out of it, because based on performances in the CPL, surely Mash he's justified the selection in the squad.
Yeah, 100%. And don't get me wrong, I'm going to completely hold my hands up. I would rather we'd moved on past Johnson Charles. No, but it's true though. Let's look at that point though, because Johnson Charles and Andre Fletcher, respectfully to both of them, them man been playing since 2012, or 2014. And don't get me wrong, as Andre Russell said the other day, if no youngsters are putting their names forward to say they're better than them, then what are we supposed to do? It's like, if I pull the stats, you're right, Santokie. Charles is the 2nd highest run scorer as a West Indian in CPL. Fletcher is the 5th highest. Now, what the young blood should be doing in CPL is saying, how are you still, after all this time, is no one better than Charles and Fletcher? So on one hand, I can't blame Sammy for going back to Andre Fletcher. On the other hand, I'm like, haven't we got anyone?
Well, this is the thing, Mash. I'm saying, again, I try not to hold this age thing as well, because obviously I'm aware certain athletes peak at different times, have different sort of longevity. But the facts are there. Fletcher's going to be 37 next month. If we're looking ahead to the World Cup, which is what the press release says, they're building towards the next ICC tournament, he'll be what? 38? He'll be 38 and a bit, basically, in the next World Cup. Are we really going to go with Fletcher for the World Cup? Surely we should have just said, listen, let's just take a young blood. Let's take a young blood opener and put them in Sri Lanka, because there's not much on the line, as I said, but it's preparing them for that World Cup. Because, I mean, knowing West Indies, we could pick Andre Fletcher in that 2026 T20 World Cup squad. That's the thing. But realistically, on paper, surely if this is, Sammy's chance to overhaul the squad and kind of selections ahead of that World Cup in a year and a half's time, surely you don't go for Andre Fletcher. And just one final thing, for all we know, Johnson Charles was dropped because Fletcher, we'll get onto it, but obviously with Evan Lewis and Brandon King back in the squad, Fletcher partnered Evan Lewis for the Patriots in CPL. So maybe it was for, listen, we haven't got enough space because King and Lewis are our top openers who we want to kind of work into the squad. Maybe we put Fletcher in as well because he's worked in tandem with Lewis and he's got that rapport. So for all we know, Johnson did take a drop. We don't know though, because it wasn't clarified in the press release. So there's a lot of questions there, Mash. But I guess the next talking point is, Brandon King's returned. Got injured during the World Cup. Hadn't seen him in the South Africa series. Brandon King's back, and I guess even bigger than that, Evan Lewis is back. He had an okay CPL. It wasn't exceptional based on the statistics, but we've always said the ceiling with Evan is very high. So it's one positive to see him kind of back in the West Indies setup. I know he's been in training camps in around the World Cup time, but to see him actually in the squad now, and hopefully he can kind of build on what he's shown in the past in West Indian colours.
Yeah, obviously Evan hit a century in this year's CPL. And it's worth pointing that out only because there's only been 3 centuries in the tournament, one of which was Evan. And I think that speaks to that point you're making about when Evan is good, he's probably in the top 5 in the region at his best, right? You have to assume that Darren Sammy has sat down with Evan Lewis over the last 6 months to try and bring him back into the fold, like he did with Dre and so on and so forth, and recognize that if I can get the best out of Evan Lewis, it's a net positive for the West Indies team. So some people might get in the comments below and pull some stats and say, yeah, but Evan wasn't better than this person. He wasn't better than that person. But you just have to work off previous international record plus seeing in CPL some signs that there is something to work with. If hitting a T20 century was easy, then everyone would have done it in CPL. As it was only Pooran, who we know is world class, Quinton de Kock and Evan Lewis. So I think that speaks to the potential ceiling that certain players have versus other players. So I'm happy to see Evan back. I hope that Evan sees this as, I don't want to call it last chance saloon because Andre Fletcher's in the squad and Evan Lewis is only 30. Evan
Lewis is a young blood. He's got 10 years in this game.
Evan Lewis is a young buck out here. so I don't want to say it's last chance saloon, but because Evan has had so many ups and downs in the recent years vis-a-vis West Indies administration, I hope that this represents some kind of renaissance for him.
Yeah, so who would you, heading into that Sri Lanka first T20, I'm thinking it's obviously Brandon King and Evan Lewis to open, surely with Fletcher as the backup. What would be your sort of combination at the top, Mash?
Yeah, that's what I'd go for. I'm sure they've flirted with this notion of Alec Athanaze before, but yeah. I think you go with King and Lewis, right hand, left hand. I know Alec Athanaze is left-handed as well, but you have to give Evan Lewis a run. Why not? Why wouldn't you? It's essentially a free hit series. So if you're not gonna play someone, you don't play Brandon King. Just because you know what Brandon King can do, and he is I think if you want to look at someone else, you do that in the 3rd game, whatever it might be. But yeah, I'd start with King and Lewis for sure.
Yeah, and obviously with Pooran, Dre Rust, and Hetmeyer all out that middle order, it's obviously an opportunity for Athanaze and Hope to kind of put together some explosive innings again in Sri Lanka. Obviously, conditions will be tough and a lot different to what they faced in the CPL. Mash, just thinking about it, would you have put Casey Carty in the squad? Because he had a decent season for Trimbago. He's in the ODI squad. With sort of us missing a few middle order batters, surely it would have been a chance if we're going to try out players for the T20 setup to maybe have phoned someone like a Casey Carter in just to have a go in the middle order here.
Yeah, I was thinking the same. And again, the obvious. I mean, they'll say, do you know what? Somebody's going to put in the comments below and say, but Andre Fletcher's also there as a backup wicketkeeper in case there's an injury to Hope. So I better just kind of say that. But Casey Carty has shown in this year's CPL, and he showed it in that one innings in last season CPL, that he has the ability to play a quick fire 2020 innings, which begs the question why he's not been able to translate that more often in ODI cricket. Maybe he's caught between a rock and a hard place in ODI cricket. It suggests to me that they don't want to, quote unquote, weaken Carty's game. Because remember, Carty's now our test match number 3, having replaced Kurt McKenzie. So I just wonder if they're like, we don't want to put Carty in T20. Let's develop him in ODI cricket and obviously test cricket going forward. Maybe they don't want him to play wham bam thank you ma'am and potentially derail his test career as well.
Yeah, no, that's a fair point. And I think that's probably where the think tank has gone. In terms of spinners, obviously Moti's in the squad with Roston Chase there as well, and Fabian Allen. You'd expect them to kind of utilize those 3 for spin. It's no doubt going to turn in Sri Lanka. Final point, Mash, on the T20 squad. With, as you said, Obed McCoy out, Jason Holder out. We've seen some new faces in the pace department. Terence Hines now, West Indies, you know, we said true West Indies fashion. We said it's a revamp. We're going to bring in some young bucks. 32-year-old Terence Hines comes in. Mash, you're shaking your head there. Talk to me, Mash. Talk to me. What's going on here?
Do you know the other day when Dre Russ said that he's going to go to the World Cup because there's no one who can do anything better than he can? Well, Terence Hines is our backup then. That's effectively whether it be Shamar Springer, Terence Hines, or Mario Shepherd. If anybody's getting in the comments below and saying, why is Dre saying he's going to the next World Cup? Who would you rather have, Andre Russell or Terence Hines? Andre Russell or Romario Shepherd? Andre Russell or Shamar Springer? And that's with no disrespect to Hines, Shepherd and Springer, but I think it puts into context why Dre can effectively say, yeah, I'll play next World Cup as well. Because there isn't anyone on his level. Yeah, Romario's done some bits and pieces, but consistently you wouldn't say he's on Andre's level. I mean, do you know what I say about the Terence Hines pick, Santokie? I use the Terence Hines pick as an example to show this is just where we're at. This is where we're at. And it's interesting because CPL put out a press release the other day saying it's been a record year for young players. They've played over 50 games and so on and so forth. Well, obviously none of them have impressed that much because Terence Hines is in the squad. And the thing is, the worst thing, Santokie, he's probably there on merit because no one else ain't been performing. Like when you go and look at, let me tell you, top wicket takers in CPL, West Indian, just the West Indians, I'm not including the overseas players. Moti 1, Joseph 2, Narain 3, Springer 4, so he's there on merit, McCoy 5, Holder 6, Allen 7, Shamar Joseph 8, Akil Hussain 9, Roston Chase 10, Terence Hines 11. He's there. Springer and Hines are there on merit. Whatever people believe about them, and I like Shamar Springer, by the way, I think there's potential there. But whatever people believe about them, based on performance, they have to be there. So the question people have to answer, Santokie, is, does Terence Hines' inclusion at 32 say more about the quality or lack thereof in the region? Or do we just applaud Terence Hines and say, boy, you're there on merit, well done?
I guess it's a bit of both. He's there on merit because the standard is so low. So he's basically earned his right because there's, as you said, there's no other competition. I think Terence Hines as well, it's not even as he's a 32-year-old who's, he's been a veteran in the domestic game. He's earned his right, like a Rayad Emirates a few years ago kind of thing. Terence Hines, I think he only made his professional debut at like 26 or 27. He's someone who's kind of come late into the game, hasn't really played much across any format in the region. So for him to kind of get his name here kind of shows the lack of options we have there. As you said, with a Shamar Springer, I'm glad to see that, someone who's, a youngster coming up, I think he'll improve. I would have liked to have seen Kadeem Lane get picked because he was in that West Indies A-team tour for Nepal. We've seen him open sometimes for Barbados Royals with Quinton de Kock. I think just to kind of shake things up and have, kind of point to an opener who's, could be a long-term opener. Having Kadeem Lane in there would have been a good pick because, as I said, if you've got Lewis, King, Andre Fletcher, they're all in their 30s. If you want to kind of use this tour to look at, the future, someone like a Kadeem Lane might have been good. But I guess, they decided not to, so it is what it is at this point. But yeah, the Terence Hines one baffled me at first, but then when I thought about it, there were no obvious names that came to mind as to who else who'd be a surefire pick with Obed McCoy and Jason Holder being out. And that speaks to, the lack of proven talent in the region. We've obviously got emerging talent, but guys who are doing it in and out in the CPL.
And it's interesting because Sammy's statement, if I go back to it, said, where is it? This gives us a chance to test our depth and assess players in different situations. Well, and I get it, and I hear Sammy, and I don't disagree with that. But if our depth is Terence Hines, then like what are we saying then? And again, no disrespect to Terence Hines, but where's the talent? Like, where's the young talent then? And the thing is, Santokie, we'll move on to ODIs now, but just to say, Robin Powell, I think, is 30. Roston Chase is in his 30s. Fabian must be, 29 now? Alec is a young buck. Fletcher, 36, 37. Hines, 32. Hope is 30. Brandon King must be 30 now. Evan Lewis is in his 30s. Moti's 29, 30. Romario Shepherd, 29, 30. Like, where's the young bucks? There is one young buck, and actually, let's pivot. Let's pivot to the ODIs, Santokie, because there's a big talking point with the ODIs. So let me go to the press release for the ODI squad. Obviously, Shea Hope, captain, Alzari Joseph, vice captain. A notable inclusion, this is a West Indies press release, is Jewel Andrew, the young Antiguan wicketkeeper batsman who has impressed and earned his place in the squad. The squad also sees the return of several key players, including Brandon King and Shafane Rutherford. Sammy said, as we continue to build our ODI team, this tour offers a valuable opportunity to evaluate strategies and give opportunities to emerging talent. We are excited to see young players like Jewel, who has earned his place as an exciting prospect for the future. Squad: Hope, Joseph, Jewel Andrew, Alec Athanase, Casey Carty, Roston Chase, Matthew Ford, Shamar Joseph, Brandon King, Evan Lewis, Gudakesh Multi, Shafane Rutherford, Jaden Seals, Romario Shepherd, and Hayden Walsh Jr. Now, before you start, Santokie, let me read that line again. We are excited to see young players like Jewel Andrew, who has earned his place as an exciting prospect for the future. If Jewel Andrew has earned his place as an exciting prospect for the future, why was he not in the T20 squad? If we're looking at emerging talent, we just seen Jewel Andrew do some bits in CPL, obviously under 19 World Cup. If we were going to pick the young buck, and I've got nothing against Jewel being picked, and we can get into the kind of minutiae of it in a bit, Santokie, because we tweeted about this precise thing happening about, a couple of months ago during the England tour. Surely you'd put him in the T20 squad if it was about giving an emerging talent what has he done in ODI cricket at the regional level that made you think, yeah, he should make his debut in ODI cricket before T20s? And I'm not against it, but I'm just intrigued that was the phrase used. Yeah, we're going to look at some emerging talent in ODIs, not in T20s. But go for it, Santokie.
Yeah, I think. Well, firstly, you have to respect yourself, Mash, because as you said, when you went on BBC TMS, I think Jonathan Agnew asked you to identify one talent to look out for. You said straight away Jewel Andrew. We both said, as it stands with the franchise lurking around, we wouldn't be surprised to see West Indies hit the red button and throw him into a senior squad, and that's happened. I think if you're picking a 17-year-old, Mash, and he's been playing in CPL regularly, you put him into the T20 format because he's building on what he's just been doing, and he's a youngster, so recent memory means he's going to be better in that format. With the 50-over cricket, it's baffling that they picked him for 50-over cricket. He's played 3 List A games, I think maybe some Super 50 for Leeward Islands, and his last game was for
Santokie. Let me interject. He's played 1 Super 50 game in his career.
So who's the other two for the academy?
It was West Indies Academy. They must have counted those games in Ireland.
Yeah, as listed.
I think they've counted those games. So do you see what I mean, Santokie? Like, I'm not against the pick. I don't want anyone to get this twisted. In fact, we kind of have to pick him, given what's going to happen if we don't pick him. But don't tell me it's based on whatever. There's nothing to base it on. And what there is to base it on is we can see with our eyes that he's probably a generational talent. We can see that. But there's no stats to support it in terms of 50-over cricket.
The only thing I can think of is they've used the Under-19 World Cup as the sort of basis, as he done that in the Under-19 World Cup. We're fast-tracking him on his performances in that World Cup to kind of come in here. But as you said, Mash, I would have picked him. I'm happy to see him in the ODI squad. I think for both West Indies and Sri Lanka, neither side is in the Champions Trophy. They'll just be using this as, there's not much context to it. So I don't mind seeing him in the ODI squad. But I would have liked to see him in the T20 squad because I think he's more likely to perform better in the T20 squad just because he's coming from CPL. But it is what it is at the end of the day, Mash. I'm excited to see him nonetheless. As you said, he looks like a generational talent. So you never know what he could do in Sri Lanka. It's going to be tough. As you said, he's not played much 50-over senior cricket. Sri Lanka, tough conditions as well. So it's going to be interesting to see how he does and where they bat him. I'd imagine they put him in at number 3 if he makes the 11. So that will be interesting. But again, with the press release, Mash, your boy Keon Otley, are we just to assume he's been dropped? Because he was the opener at the last tour against Australia. So Keon Otley's out. Teddy Bishop, no mention of Teddy Bishop. So a few missing faces from that ODI squad, which haven't been clarified in the press release. I'm just looking through the ODI squad now. Other than that, any other omissions? I think generally it's pretty much the squad we saw in Australia. But yeah, Otley and Teddy Bishop were two who haven't been clarified. I can only imagine Otley's been dropped. He
You'd
was
have to assume you have to assume Teddy Bishop's been dropped.
But then, on what basis has Teddy Bishop been dropped? I don't know. That's what I mean. I don't
Because
understand.
they picked a 21-year-old before he was ready to go to Australia of all places. He got a duck and now he's dropped. So we've replaced him with a 17-year-old.
Oh my god.
the thing is, I do want to defend the pick in one way though, because Jewel, of course, before people get at me in the comments, Jewel did play in the West Indies Championship this season, and in fairness, Jewel averaged 32 with 350s in the 6 matches that he played for Leeward Island. So maybe they're saying, well, boy, he showed that he could bat in the West Indies Championship. So rather than debut in T20, where he's also shown he can bat, let's give him a debut in low stakes ODI cricket because it don't mean well. It means something. But the thing is, it does mean something else in Santokie, because otherwise we actually have to win some ODI games, or we're going back to the World Cup. We're going back to the World Cup qualifiers in 2027 if we don't. In 2026 if we don't.
Yeah, exactly. So there is some meaning behind it, but it doesn't make sense. The only other logic I can think of is they're hoping he plays some ODI cricket and then that leads straight into the Super 50 when he gets back, and they might think, that they can continue that kind of performances. But it is a strange one to see him not in the T20 squad. Other than that, as we said with the T20 squad, Brandon King back in the 50 over setup after missing the Australia tour.
Hold on, Santokie, 1 second. I just want to share this on the screen. Can you see it?
Yeah.
Yeah, because people will think we're lying. So I just wanted to show people the tweet on August the 30th, 2024, so about 2 months ago. And this is what we tweeted, because not everybody who watches Caribbean Cricket Podcasts follows us on Twitter. So we put, when we went on BBC TMS in the summer during the England-West Indies series, we said live on air 2 things could either happen with Jewel. Either 1, he goes on the franchise circuit and doesn't play for West Indies ever. Or 2, West Indies hit the red button and give him a fast call up to the senior side. Wouldn't surprise me if we see him in the Sri Lanka tour. Yeah. So and it's important that we put it up, Santokie, because people just think we're gassing and that we're saying, oh yeah, we thought he'd be picked. We actually tweeted it and said we think he'll get picked for Sri Lanka, because that would be a very West Indian thing to do, given all eyes are on Jewel Andrew right now. So before you move on, Santokie, I just want you to address that. Given his potential trajectory, do you think now, 2 months from that tweet and 3 or 4 months since we were on BBC TMS, do you think now that West Indies had no option, like they had to almost pick him to show him we are investing in you already?
100%. I think the fact that, his performances, particularly in the World Cup, and then what he was doing afterwards, and just like you said, Mash, if you see him play even a few overs, he's a really good talent. So, and we know sort of, especially with franchises, how they're scouting now for youths to pick up on long-term deals. So I think Cricket West Indies will know franchises will circle him. We're coming up to a busy period now when there's about 4 or 5 franchise leagues starting in November, December, January. So I think they've just thought, you know what? We have to take him just to show there's some commitment. Hopefully, if he plays for Maroon, that will give him some sort of commitment and loyalty to playing international cricket. So they've just got in there early. I think in a previous era, pre-franchise cricket or this amount of franchise cricket, you'd let him kind of bed in with some more regional cricket, play the Super 50, play another 4-day series, 4-day tournament, a regional tournament, and then pick him for West Indies colours. I think now they've just thought, you know what, we have to hit the emergency button and get him into the Maroon. So it speaks to the modern landscape of cricket, but I guess Cricket West Indies, they did what they had to do. It's similar to Shamar Joseph after what he did at the Gabba, and they handed him a contract quick, because they were like, listen, we need to wrap this up and get him committed to West Indies cricket. So, I mean, it's a smart strategic move from Cricket West Indies, because if Jewel Andrew was signed up to franchises and we didn't see him in West Indies colours, we'd all be cussing out. So they've tried. Yeah.
Do you know who I want to relate it to? Devil Brevis, for South Africa. He's actually at the 8. How's Brevis now? He's 21, right? Remember when he was seen as like this brilliant 18, 19-year-old? Devil Brevis has now played 68 T20s globe-trotting around the world, bare IPL, etc. He's played twice ever for South Africa. Do you see what I mean? The franchises got to Brevis before South Africa could even put Brevis in their team. This is the only way around it. When you have such a young talent like we've got in Jewel, you better play him straight away, or the franchises will just come and take him and eat him, and then and then he may play, he may never play.
And I guess we could probably do a separate episode on this, but it's worth pointing out that Cricket West Indies have handed out their central contracts for that.
Oh yeah,
year.
of course, yeah.
For the first time they've given multi-year contracts. So Hope, Moti have been given a few others as well. I forgot off the top of my head. Have been given 2-year contracts.
Shamar got multi.
Yeah. So that's again another move. I guess it's following what England did. To try and get people secured more long term, so they're not lured by the franchises. So we've seen Cricket West Indies at least try to be proactive, and rather than cussing out the franchises and the landscape, they've tried to help as much as they can in getting players to commit to West Indies and kind of give them a secure long-term future, so they don't have to worry about playing for every single franchise. So that's
should they have given Jewel Landry a 5-year contract?
It's a 10-year contract.
That's what I'm saying, cuz. That's what I'm saying.
I
would have offered him a 5-year contract with the re-up coming after 2 years. You know what I mean?
Yeah, in WWF when Vincent Mann gave Bret Hart a 20-year contract, he said, "Listen, give me 20 years, bro, unprecedented, 20-year contract to Joe Landry." But yeah, nonetheless, whilst I would like to see him play T20 cricket, I'm excited, Mash. I'm sure you are as well, to see him just in West Indies colours. What he can
100%.
But then also, if the man hits a 50 in Sri Lanka in ODI cricket, the franchises will be putting their bids in straight away December and January, because I think it's going to be sooner rather than later that we see him tearing it up in the IPL.
They're gonna nyam him up quick time.
So yeah, let's talk about the other ODI pick. So as I said, Brandon King back, Shafane Rutherford, after doing a big Instagram post about how happy he was to be in West Indies colours when he played the ODIs against England. He skipped the Australia tour. He wasn't in the Australia tour. Rutherford's back now, so good to see Rutherford back. And the intriguing one is Evan Lewis back. So we expected him to get a T20 call up. He's got the ODI call up. Hasn't played an ODI in over 3 years, since 2021. I forgot what he even did in Super 50, but his last 50 over kind of experience would have been in the Super 50 for Trinidad and Tobago last year. Were you surprised to see Evan get the call up for the longer format?
I mean, Kjor Notley got a call up, so all bets are off at this stage. I literally am of the opinion in West. I mean, obviously you saw how upset Uncles got when I said that Hayley Matthews should get picked. Like, I'm of the opinion, Santokie, that anyone can get a pick these days. And again, obviously I rate Evan Lewis, so I've got nothing against Evan Lewis getting picked, but we're kind of at a stage, Santokie, where I don't even think we can really look at stats and numbers and justify this, that, and the third, because anybody can get a pick, really and truly. You have to assume that Sammy's like, well, if we're going to look at Evan, we might as well look at Evan in all formats and in all contexts. And maybe it's a show of faith in Evan to say, we are actually backing you. We are putting everything into bringing you back into the fold, so that Evan can never say, I wasn't given a chance. I don't even know if he'll play. Looking at that team, it's not immediately clear if he'll play.
Was it Afanase and Otley that opened in the last one against Australia?
What, in Australia? Was it them? Or was it...
It was King didn't play in Australia. King only played in the England series before that. So
I think, because remember, I think they don't really want Shea to open anymore in ODIs. So I would, looking at that team, you'd kind of think, actually, maybe Evan will play. You kind of look at it and go, what, King and Lewis? Then that allows Shea Hope to come at number 4?
And I think Afanase is more naturally suited to come in at a 3 rather than an opener in 50 over cricket. So I think they could go with King and Lewis, particularly if they play in the T20s and they do well. They'll probably want to continue that build based on momentum. But it'd be interesting. It'd be interesting to see kind of where they go. But also one other thing, because the Cricket West Indies press release says, obviously, this is the first squad selected under the new sort of selection criteria. The selection criteria is senior talent manager collects all the information, presents it to Darren Sammy. However, if you go on the Cricket West Indies website, they've advertised a vacancy for the senior talent manager, which is an ongoing application now. So that begs the question: who's currently working as a senior talent manager? Is there one in place? This is why I said at the top of the show, they can tell me it was the new selection policy. It was probably just Sammy. It has to be. Or Vibes. It was Vibes. It had to be Vibes. Because using Evan as an example,
what was the stats and performance metrics put in front of whoever to say, yeah, I think we should go with Evan? And like I say, let me state, I've got nothing against Evan being there. In fact, I'm glad he's there. But you can't tell me there were some numbers put in front of anyone to say anything.
No.
We haven't played Super 50 since last year. So what was the metric? What was the metric?
Numbers, I think the problem with numbers is obviously it's good to have data, but you can also control numbers to suit your narrative. So, for instance, if you asked about Evan Lewis, they could say, "Oh, he has a high percentage of runs against spin, and we know it's going to spin in Sri Lanka," like that kind of thing. You can kind of suit the numbers. So again, it's tricky as well because that can numbers and data. If you're relying purely on that as the metric as well as what the new selection is saying, you can also bend that to kind of suit your agenda in terms of who you want to pick. Regardless, you're still going to if the head coach wants to see a man in the squad, that man's going to get
100%. 100%. I think just moving on though from Evan, I think the only other pick, though there's possibly two, but the only other pick really that warrants some level of discussion is Jayden Seales. Yeah. He hasn't played an ODI since Netherlands away. I was there for that. He played one game out of the 3 in the Netherlands. That was nearly that was like 2.5 years ago. It makes sense to me why you'd pick Jayden. He's our premier test bowler. I don't know, and I wouldn't say for certain that Jayden has mastered the art of white ball bowling, but if we're looking for X-factor bowlers, it makes sense that you'd have a squad with in white ball cricket, with Alzari, Shamar, and Jayden Seales, because they are the 3, taking Kimar Roach out the equation, they are the 3 premier pacers in the region. So it kind of makes sense that you include all 3, and I'm actually glad they've kind of gone with Jayden, because he's 23 years old. You have to have a look at him again, surely.
Yeah, just to clarify, because people might cuss us out in the comments, he played the India series last year, ODI one. Again,
did he?
India, yeah. I forgot, but he played his last.
Are you sure about that?
Yeah. Jayden Seales. So he played the Bridgetown and Trinidad, the 3 ODIs. Well, he played the India series 2022 after Netherlands. Then he played
sugar.
3 ODIs.
So yeah. A cuss out's coming for me because but you know what? Let me yeah, sugar, you're right. I completely forgot about that India series, Sorry, the Netherlands one, so tell a lie, the Netherlands one was his debut.
Yeah, his debut, yeah.
Right, so that was his debut. Sorry, that's my nonsense there. The Netherlands one was his debut. That's the last time I remember really paying any attention to him in ODI cricket. But I think it's fair to say, Santokie, that ODI cricket hasn't been a happy hunting ground for him.
No, exactly. It's I'm hoping now, he's learned his game more. He's played longer formats in county season, and kind of let's see what he can perform. But I'm glad to see Jayden Seales there. I think he's someone, we know what he can do. At one point, we were talking about him like we are Jewel Andrew. We were worried he would be swallowed up by the franchise circuit. He's kind of committed to West Indies cricket, particularly red ball cricket. He's kind of focused really on reining in his red ball skills. So yeah, I'm glad to see Jayden Seales in the setup. I think we always need wicket-taking bowlers, especially in ODI cricket. So interested to see what he can do. I think it'll be tough for him in Sri Lanka, but you never know. I think Moti and Hayden Walsh, if he plays with the leg spin, are going to be crucial for these ODIs. And as you said, Mash, ODI cricket's really been on the back burner for West Indies for the past, since we failed to qualify, which was almost 1.5 years ago for the World Cup. It's been on the back burner. However, at some point, you have to prioritize it, especially as a World Cup. I know it's 3 years away, but at some point you have to put plans in motion to say, you know what, it's a priority for us to kind of get back into things in ODI cricket. But we're down bad in ODI cricket at the moment, so hopefully, Jayden Seales or something can help spark some new life into the side.
Yeah, it's hard to really say. Since that Netherlands defeat, even with Sammy, because obviously Sammy was in charge for that down bad World Cup qualifiers. When was the last time our ODI team had any kind of direction? And that's, again, I'm not saying that to disrespect Sammy, but just it shows how hard a job he's got. And the problem is, Santokie, is internationally, ODI cricket is seen as so irrelevant outside of a World Cup. Like, I think I read somewhere the other day that Pakistan ain't played an ODI in about a year or something crazy like that. Like, ODI cricket isn't even scheduled that often to really be able to establish any kind of style of play or identity. So
Yeah.
I couldn't tell you what our identity. We haven't played since Australia. That was in February. I don't know what our ODI identity is.
I think you've hit the nail on the head. I think ODIs only become relevant the 3 months before a tournament. So now with the Champions Trophy in February, you'll see teams start playing more ODIs. But if you look in England, Mash, where we are in England, the 50 over domestic tournament, I don't think any senior players played that at all for the past 5-6 years. So there's really 50 over cricket's been put on the back burner. We've been notoriously down bad in it for the past 10 years at least. I can't see it changing. I can imagine us still going to the World Cup qualifiers and probably struggling to make the next World Cup. But it is what it is. I think with the talent pool, if we're picking Terence Hines for T20 cricket, the talent pool is so shallow at the moment. We have to pick or choose what formats we want to be good at. So I think ODI cricket's going to be on the back burner for us. And this is kind of one where there's not really much context to it. So it's more I think it's just not going to be ones where you just go through the motions. If we get hammered 3-0 in the series, in the ODIs, it is what it is at this point.
So I just want to go on record as we wrap this episode up. I just want to go on record as saying, previously, when we played T20 series, everyone's cussed me when I've said, we're playing a B team, a C team. You may remember, Santokie, that I cussed then when everyone was jumping up and down saying, we beat South Africa 3-0. And I kept saying, but that was the South Africa B, South Africa C. That same down bad South Africa team lost to Ireland in UAE or wherever that series was being played, right? So what I will say is that this Sri Lanka series should be, I think it's a good series to if we beat them, I'm not looking for any caveats because Sri Lanka will pick their best team or the best team that they can pick right now. Okay. And yes, we're down some players, but I feel like beating Sri Lanka in either one of the formats, I'd jump up and down and take off my shirt and say, let open top bus parade back home if they come back. So I do think whether it's a kind of irrelevant, bilateral, friendly or not, whatever these things are, it would be a statement victory if we were to win either series.
Yeah, definitely. I think an away series, I know, did we beat England in the ODI series last year, Christmas? We beat them in the T20s.
I think we beat them in both, I think we beat them in both.
I'm going to have to check because...
No, I think we beat them in both,
I think it's one thing doing it at home, but to go away anywhere, particularly in the subcontinent, and get a victory in a series, it would be
we won the ODI series 2-1, and then won the T20 series 3-2.
Yeah, so I think we have one recent series in ODI cricket, but to do it away, as you said, would be an achievement, particularly in Sri Lanka. And so we await and see. We await to see some good performances, and always we rally Mash as always. It'll be a UK friendly time. I think the T20s are at 2:30 in the afternoon. The ODIs will be like 9 a.m. or something like that. So we'll tune in wherever they're streaming it, wherever they're showing it. Might have to download some down bad streams to watch it. But we'll be there rallying as always. Caribbean Cricket Podcast. No one does it like us. Talk about all the relevant topics. We'll be back surely with some content around this series, or maybe do an episode on the contract situation, everything going on there. But when it comes to West Indies cricket, we've got everything covered. Also, the Women's World Cup going at the moment. The West Indies women's team beat Scotland after losing comprehensively to South Africa women. They've come back to beat Scotland. I think it all leads down to a crunch game against England to kind of try and get out of the group games and get into the semi-final. So we rally as always there, Mash. I know you're still awaiting Hayley Matthews to get that call up for the men's senior side, so we await that as well. But we rally. Follow us Instagram, X, TikTok, Patreon as well. Show support if you can. Donate anything on our Patreon. Have I missed anything out, Mash? I've lost track with all the kind of things we're on at the moment.
Never ever forget the OnlyFans. Always the OnlyFans. As well. Big up Caribbean Cricket Podcast OnlyFans. Get on there, people.
Send us the Discord.
And the Discord. Everything. We're everywhere. We are everywhere, people. But listen, as Santokie says, big up the women. Big up Caribbean Cricket Podcast. More content coming soon. Thank you as ever for tuning in. Remember to like, share, and subscribe on your way out. See you all very, very soon.
West Indies Cricket, Caribbean Cricket Podcast. West Indies Cricket, Caribbean Cricket Podcast.